So today I thought I would give a bit of insight into some of the key changes coming in Darktide with what the developers at Fat Shark are calling hybrid combat. But to start, it's only fair that I say a massive thank you to every single one of you for the amazing love my last video got. It is a night and day difference between making Halo content and making Warhammer content. It feels so nice to be able to be positive about a game that you enjoy. So I'm going to do my very best to keep this going and make as much good quality Warhammer content that I can for you all to enjoy. But to get straight into it, what exactly is hybrid combat and what does it involve? Well, it's probably best if I start off by stealing a few words from Mats. He is the lead combat engineer at Fat Shark. He gave us a few words of wisdom a couple of months ago in a development blog update. This goes through what they are trying to do for hybrid combat, and I could just read off of that, but I wanted to go a step further. I wanted to show you all the new systems and mechanics that they have made for Darktide. So, to start off with, what is hybrid combat? Well, basically, it's when you take the core gameplay of Vermintide and build on it by integrating ranged combat. So what Fat Shark ended up with is a hybrid between up-close, claustrophobic melee combat and a classic FPS. And look, I completely agree with this. I think that this is the best understanding of 40k because it's a mix between shooting and stabbing. Even though it's set in the far future, a good old hammer to the skull can sometimes be much more reliable instead of wasting tons of ammo trying to get through someone's armor. But there's an important distinction you need to make. It's hybrid combat, not FPS with an optional melee weapon. Players will need to understand and learn how to use both types of weapons and when to switch between them to get the best results. If there's a group of enemy gunners raining down on your squad, it actually might be best to pick up a chainsword and charge at them, screaming,
"I scum! No prisoners! For the Emperor!" Ah!
But in other situations, it actually might be better to just have everyone in your squad pull out their guns and go full last stand and just gun every single charging enemy down in glorious, fiery combat. As far as what we've noticed from the gameplay so far, it looks like the melee weapons that we have swing a pretty reasonable amount slower than what they have in Vermintide. I think this has been done in order to make sure that hordes of enemies actually have a little bit more of a threat to them. Another thing that I noticed is that it looks like you can actually activate your melee weapon. I don't really know what else to call this, but your chainsword, when you play as the veteran, can actually go full Gears of War and saw someone in half, like blood fountain everywhere, and it looks insane. And then also the Zealot's hammer can actually electrify and kill enemies with that, with like a bit more of like oomph behind it. It also looks like you will get separate sort of bonuses for doing kills with these weapons activated, but I'll come to that later in the video. When it comes to the FPS side of things, Fat Shark ended up basically making the choice to just go balls to the walls and have everything that you would want in a good shooter. So that's why you will also have a progression system that will allow you to tailor the handling of your weapon through a mixer board to actually make guns feel even more unique and fine-tuned. We don't have any gameplay of how this would work, but my interpretation is that if you up the damage a little bit, you might end up with a bit more recoil or a little bit less accuracy. It'll probably have the usual sort of push and pull that you would see in a lot of other FPS games. Mats also mentions that they have applied a rule of cool, which is something that they mentioned when it comes to weapon attachments. So you can also get things like holographic sights or hell, even a flashlight on your gun. From the gameplay we've seen, it also looks like this will tie into the map design as well, because some sections are really dark and you can't see shit. So it would really make for some very hectic gameplay when you're moving your flashlight around and you see a huge horde of enemies coming towards you. It would be very similar to the initial reveal trailer, which I think is just awesome. So now that you know how the first-person shooter side of this game is going to work, let's go through the new mechanics. So one of the first things I wanted to talk about was the new movement system. This was completely overhauled to include sprinting, vaulting, and sliding, so that you can dodge shots from enemies, which is great. However, you can't have players running around like Usain Bolt dodging every bullet. That's why the developers also made two very simple systems to be able to manage this. So, number one, they made a stamina bar which will limit excessive movement. So there's a limit to how much you can move around as quickly. And there's also a new mechanic called Toughness. Toughness basically works like an energy shield from Halo. It will absorb damage and regenerate when you're not getting shot at. The actual lore behind this is different for each character. Like the veteran, it's their armor that gives them the toughness, or for the zealot, it's their faith in the Emperor, and so on. So there's a in-game reason for why the toughness is there, and there are a couple of important things that we can notice from the gameplay as well. So first of all, each character actually has a different amount of toughness. This has obviously been done in order to balance the different classes, because if one class is able to deal tons of damage and can also just have shit tons of toughness, then people are going to end up abusing that system. So there needs to be balance, so that way people can play a range of different classes. Something else that I did notice is that the toughness meter that you have at the bottom of your screen, when you get a activated melee kill, you can actually notice a boost to the regeneration of it. So if you're in the middle of a fight and you've got about half of your toughness, if you activate your chainsword and you get a kill, you'll notice it will come back faster, which could be a really handy thing to use in hectic fights. Something else I wanted to add is that Mats also says to remember to stay together, as regeneration is tied to sticking with your team. It does look like this is the case when we actually have a look at the gameplay with a heads-up display, because the toughness meter seems to increase a lot faster when you're near squad mates, which I think is a great system. This is going to help bring players together as a squad and really give you those shoulder to shoulder in the trenches fighting against hordes of enemies together moments, which I think will make for some really memorable experiences when you play Darktide, especially when people start to learn how to use this to their advantage. So that's most of the important stuff done for the game, but another thing that was mentioned in the blog was actually that for the first-person shooter side of things, there's actually going to be suppression in the game. Now, if you're a Battlefield fan, you may be a little bit scared. but it's actually not all that bad. It looks to be more of a visual cue, so you'll have a little bit more blurriness to your screen, and also a little bit more trouble aiming at your enemies, but you can still kill them just as easily, and it looks to be something where they're just trying to make the shooting elements a little bit more realistic. On a final note, I just wanted to add, I think that Fat Shark have absolutely knocked this game out of the park when it comes to adding a first-person shooter to their games when they have never done something like that before. So, well done, big up on them, and if you haven't already, also make sure that you sign up for the closed beta. Last I heard, it is going to be happening this weekend, so make sure that you sign up, make sure that you can have a go at the game, because there's a lot here that I think people can enjoy, and there's a lot that I think that we've only scratched the surface on. It feels like there's a fair bit of depth to this game that I really want to explore. So hopefully you can all join me on that journey as we learn more about it and can have a hell of a lot of fun along the way. But that's about it from me today. I hope you all enjoyed the video as well, and if you did, you know what to do. I've been Kiv, and I'll see you all on the next one.